What's going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by my broadcast partner, the man behind all the controls, Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you this fine day?
Much better, man. Excited. You know why? We're not going to talk about it on the air, but I'm really excited for the next week or so. And so I'm getting pumped, man. That's all I can say.
Yes, it is. We're both in busy seasons, but there is a lot going on. And fans, if you want to keep up with all the action, if you want to keep up with all the content on the Tapped Out Podcast Network, you got to go to Patreon, patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. Become a member, and you get access to all the shows early. You get access to a lot of behind the scenes stuff. You can also go on YouTube. You can become a member there. The main thing with YouTube, though, folks, you got to subscribe. How have you not subscribed to our channel so far? Hit that like button, hit the bell, ding, 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 get all the notifications. And then, of course, hey, our audio file people, we got you covered too. iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, pretty sure Transistor Radio, wherever you can listen to podcasts, you can find us. So make sure, again, during the crazy summer, we're going to keep you up to date on what's happening on the national scene. We're going to keep you up to date. I would say most comprehensive coverage of this region wrestling of anyone.
So I want to ask you, without giving away exactly what's going on over the next week or so, I thought about cutting some content just for the members, paid members, whether it's just conversations in the car, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Over the next week and a half or so, um, just doing it for Patreon and YouTube members only. It'll be obviously on my phone, in the car, maybe something like that. But how about just maybe showing some video of where, like on location, and I'll leave it at that. I thought that would be interesting for the next week or so.
No, I think that's great. I I haven't done this yet with you guys, but I really thought about we're about to talk about a show that I went to, and one thing I was thinking about is, okay, this is how, in hindsight, this is how I would have booked that show. And so, fans, yes, we want to. Our goal is not to give less content. Our goal is to figure out how to give you more content, more bang for your buck. That makes you say, tell your friend, oh, if you're not a member for this podcast, you need to join
And let me
right
ask
away.
you, because we discussed something yesterday. Yes, folks, we actually talked to each other on like when we're not recording, and we had a conversation about look, there are weeks, and we're going to get into one of those next week about weekends where like it's just impossible for us to all go to the same place because there's just so many. If we split up, I'd love to know tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Would people like on location, like you already do like the Heath's hot takes when you're and by the way, the show we're going to talk about here in a minute, you did one, and it's up behind the paywall over there on Patreon and on YouTube. And just the curiosity of like, hey, if Myron goes to the Anarchy show, in Royston, and I go to Tannery Row for Disruptor, Turnbuckle, you go, you know what I mean? Like we're all over the place. How cool would it be if maybe like we just kind of go out of our way a little bit because oh, by the way, people may not understand. We're super busy after the show, more so than even during the show.
Yes.
So trying to make it a point, like, hey, do we cut a 5, 10, 15-minute video after the show immediately and we put those thoughts up? Like, how cool would it be in one weekend to like have Heath, take Myron's take from a show, Nick's take from a show. Like, we got to make a concerted effort to do that more. But we'd love to know if that's stuff you guys would be interested in, and maybe even grabbing a wrestler from the show and doing something with a live at the event.
Yeah, I think the options are wide open, and fans, this is stuff. I mean, we post a lot of stuff that stays behind the paywall, and so don't feel like you're just paying to get shows like this early. I mean, there is tons and tons and tons of content, and again, when we're talking on the phone off air, all we're thinking about is how to create more content.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, one thing I posted pictures of the venue the other night, but I think it would be helpful for fans to see, get a feel for the venue And we'll talk a little bit about venues at the end of this episode, especially during the summer. But fans, yeah, what kind of content do you want to hear about indie wrestling? Because we feel like, I mean, pull back the curtain a little bit. There are hundreds of podcasts that analyze WWE, AEW, TNA, and all that. Not so many analyzing Southeastern independent wrestling. So, fans, what do you want to know? Who do you want us to talk to? What would you like to hear? Taptapod@gmail.com. Let us know.
Yeah, 100%.
So let's jump right into the Indy Rewind. It's crazy that we're just in a hugely busy time of year for independent wrestling. Friday night, I was able to go to my first ever Title Belt Pro show in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was at a place called Camp North End. Literally, I could see the downtown buildings from this venue. Really cool venue, really cool vibe. One of those industrial places that's been recommissioned into like businesses, restaurants, offices, things like that. The kind of the history of this promotion, just very briefly, they did Title Belt ice cream. The owners of this were doing ice cream at PWX shows. And when PWX folded, they started their own promotion. So they ran several shows last year. This is their second show for this year. Couple of really interesting matches. You had Brittany Jade versus Warden from Georgia. So Warden making his North Carolina debut. You had Drew Hood, who is, how do I even say this? He holds multiple titles in the Carolinas. He took on TNA's Savannah Evans, Charlotte native. The main event was TJ Boss versus Dre the Goat. Contrasting styles, really great match. But the match that stole the show, and it was Hustle and Flow, the team of Zay Vega and Jordan Holt versus the Moody Brothers. And I said this on my hot take. That was a wildly entertaining match. Exceeded my expectations. Write the name Jordan Holt down. We know you've got Jay Malachi, who signed with NXT from this region. You got Lucky Ali signed with NXT from this region. They got to have an eye on Jordan Holt. You want to talk about charisma, talent, off the charts athleticism. But this was it was really refreshing to see four young guys in there mix modern day athleticism with old school tag team feel. I can't put them over any more than that. It was a really entertaining match.
Yeah, and like you said, if you want even a deeper dive into it, behind that paywall, Heath's Hot Takes, Title Belt Pro. Like I said, it's really cool, like, because you get an unfiltered, processed thoughts immediately after the show, and that's kind of what we said. We want to do more of that. So I would suggest diving behind the paywall and finding out a little more about Title Belt Pro.
Yes, they did not announce their next show, but it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes from my house, so it's definitely one that's on my radar now, and I'm interested to see what the future holds for them. Then Saturday night, shows everywhere in Georgia. Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling was in Athens at, I believe, Southern Brewing Company.
Mm-hmm.
You had, again, you got the Nightmare Factory kids. You got people like Vari Morales, Brady Booker, the typical cast of Turnbuckle, but just building. They just continue to build that brand and continue to put on great shows.
Yeah, and then what we always talk about with Turnbuckle is you never know. So QT Marshall has an appearance. Everybody's like, "Oh, QT's going to be on the show." Well, then he's like, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to defend my Coastal Championship Wrestling, which is a Florida championship that he holds down there. He's going to defend that. Oh, by the way, we're not going to tell you who it's going to be. It's going to be a surprise." Then it turns about it's Adrian Ward, the Warden that you just saw the night before up in the Carolinas, now comes down, and they put on a heck of a match. Like you said, it's Brady Booker, Luke Sampson, Var Morales. Look, the Seventh Sons dip it. We talk about the beauty of, and I think it's just an advantage that they're just going to have. Mm-hmm. That yes, they have some of the usual, like a roster that's but by the way, there's a pretty positive thing about when your usual roster is Var Morales, Brady Booker, Luke Sampson, QT, that's what we can expect on a show. But then, like I said, they will pull some. They're giving guys opportunities. I've seen Jimmy Wild a couple times now against Var Morales, and they've done very well in both places. They've kind of done their match. But it looks like there's just layers of you never ever know who's going to show up at Turnbuckle.
One match. That one result we got, you want to talk about giving guys opportunity. You got Parker Lee, who's a Nightmare Kid, over Chad Skywalker. That's someone getting a great opportunity. Mm-hmm. He's the Mayhem champion over there at IWE, but has wrestled in various places in Georgia. That's a huge opportunity for him. We also, I want to touch on this very briefly. We've talked in the past about Turnbuckle not really having long angles or storylines, but they build that within the show. Like they'll have an angle within the show, but then Warden attacked Luke Sampson, and they've already set up a match for July 22nd. So that'll be interesting to see that they're starting to plan out ahead.
I think where they're smart, and we know the people obviously there who are kind of doing this. Notice that it was a story that set up a match at the same venue.
Yes.
At the next Monday night, the Nightmare show. So I don't know that you're going to get, because they're running Jefferson, Commerce, Athens, Buford, Stone Mountain. They're running all over the place. I don't think you're going to have stories that go from, Athens to Stone Mountain to Buford. I think that's not what you're going to see. But I think they're going to be smart enough to go, we might do a specific thing knowing we're running Buford month after month after month. Okay, we can pepper in some stories, but don't worry about the stuff that's not going to be. We're not going to try to make people confused and go, hey, you got to come see us at all of our locations to make any sense of our stories. Like that's a good move.
Yes. I would say I've always been the proponent of, you sell tickets, you figuratively sell tickets for your next show at this one, which they did, and that's this match. But I also think you literally sell tickets for your next show. As people are leaving, hey, we're back July 2nd. Get your, you can get our $15 tickets are $10 tonight. And so just there's something to think about. The Turnbuckle just continues to crush it. And you know what? I just realized I'm already going to be in Atlanta for an event July 22nd. Wouldn't be anything for me to stay over and hit that show up on Monday night in Athens. So put that down on the calendar. That is happening. Also on Saturday night, you had NAWA Classic in Rome, Georgia. For lack of a better term, a lot going on with this promotion that we won't get into. Their crowds have been up and down. Very briefly, this was kind of a split off.
Hold on. Let's be full. Let's be honest. Get my hand up here. They were down. There's a reason why there were some changes and some things happened, right? So they were down. Go ahead. Sorry, I wanted to make sure
Right. You basically had KLT, which split into NAWA Classic and Primetime Wrestling, which is mainly in Gadsden, Alabama now. But this show in Rome, back up, I think it was back at the old KLT building.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Highlighted
by bringing back one of the great feuds from KLT, Zach Mosley and Skrilla, who had a 20-minute draw. 5-minute overtime was a draw again. Two guys that know how to tell a story inside and out of the ring. And again, reports saying the size of this crowd was multiples over their last show.
And that led us into a conversation a little bit. Knowing what's a draw for your crowd. And by the way, I think the secret sauce here that you got to pay attention to is those two guys had a long running feud there.
Mm-hmm.
Those people in that, in Rome got invested in that story. They got invested in those characters. Whatever you want to call it. That's what I call it. They're just the characters of Zach Mosley and Skrilla the Great. That Rome crowd was completely emotionally invested in. Good or, hate, love, whatever, which side, they were completely invested in them. So I started asking the question, and by the way, this is not an indictment on Zach Mosley or Skrilla, by the way, because a lot of people might take it that way. What I'm saying, the strength of that story was the story, like the emotional attachment we just spoke of. Like, we notice sometimes other shows are worried about putting on the best matches that they could possibly put on. And I asked you, I said, hey, let me ask you a question. Instead of worrying about having the best wrestlers in Georgia on your show, and this may be semantics, right? Like when we're talking about it, shouldn't you be worried about who's the best draw for your crowd? And clearly, that reason I asked that question was, why has Zach Mosley and Skrilla not been there if they were your biggest draws, your biggest emotional investment, blah, 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 that is simply bringing them back in, that your crowd shot back up like this? Because I heard literally people saying they went to this show because those guys were on the card. Like, hey, I hadn't seen Zach in, a year. And I was like, I was going to make a point to go out there, and see him when he's back. Now, is it a case of, hey, we can't miss them unless they go away for a while? Or was it, no, let's ride the hot hand while we can? Did you cut the ties too soon? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's literally the question at hand. But is the draw, does it outweigh worrying about who the best wrestler is? Like, and when I mean best wrestler, I mean like technical, because I get some people would argue the best wrestler, it knows the emotional investment and all that part, and that's why they draw. But I just mean simply people worrying about, like, again, not a shot at anybody in particular, but like, hey, people that worry about, hey, the best bell-to-bell match, they went out there and they stole the show, they had the best match. Okay, but do the fans care back past that? Like, why don't you just find the guy who's the best emotional attachment draw? Like, we've had guys that we talked about in other promotions where, like, look, they're never going to give you a 5-star classic, but man, do those fans come and buy, they buy tickets to see that guy.
Yes, I talked a little bit about this on the hot take, because there are sometimes I see a wrestler that I don't get, that I don't think is great in the ring, but they have a connection with the crowd and people buy tickets to see them. And at the end of the day, you're in this to make money. You're in this to build your brand. I don't think there's a lot of things that we can debate in wrestling. I don't think it's debatable that at KLT's height in this building, Zach Mosley was the champion and Skrilla was like also that they
or vice versa. They were the champion. One of the two of them was the champions. Yeah,
they were unquestionably, undisputably the top two wrestlers on that rock. I'm talking about the way they were being booked at that promotion. They were booked as the top two wrestlers. And KLT was growing. KLT was becoming that promotion that people were starting to talk about, which I don't want to change the subject. We talked about Coastal Empire Wrestling. We weren't talking about them at the beginning of the year. We're talking about them now. You know what those two have in common? Zach Mosley.
Yeah.
It is clear to me in that Rome, Georgia, Zach Mosley appears to be a draw. Skrilla appears to be a draw. Again, you have to know your audience. You have to. It takes time to build that connection. But kudos. I mean, again, to say the NAWA has had issues, we'll just say that. I mean, documented well in other places. But kudos for them for drawing a good crowd and for knowing Zach Mosley and Skrilla. Hey, they'll get us hot again.
So think learning that. Another thing we kind of talked about. I promise you guys, we're going to get back to the Indy Rewind in a minute. Another thing that I sidebarred off of that was, doing the research to figure out like who is your draw, like promoters, bookers, whatever. Shall we say they have their favorites? Like,
yes.
Is that like that's not an uncommon thing, and it's not something that's not like, oh, I never knew that. Kudos to, and I do say this, kudos to Disruptor. They do a thing where you can use like certain wrestlers. There's a promo code for a wrestler. You can get a discount, for your tickets typically if you use that promo code. My thing is, why more people don't do that? Like, why would you not invest a little bit? Like, because somebody said, well, I don't want to give them a 10% discount on the ticket just to find out who's selling them. I'm like, if you were paying somebody to do research for your promotion, it would cost you money. By the way, if your tickets are $15, it's costing you $1.50 per ticket. Or maybe you get creative and it's, hey, if you use this promo code, you can get 4 tickets for $50 versus $60 or something. I don't know. Get creative. Why do I think it's a cool thing and a concept that I really like? I actually like it. You would be stunned, and that's all I'm going to say. If you found out like, hey, who was really selling your tickets? Because if you're a guy who likes in-ring work and you're like, hey, this is the best guy we have on the show. What if you found out he was only selling like a few tickets?
Right.
But then you found out that a guy, I was using a scenario and I'll say it because he won't be offended by this. We talked about Jacob Ashworth is never going to go out there and give you a Meltzer 5-star match. Right. But fans absolutely are drawn to him and love him. And he knows his crowd. So I would say, I would beg to make the case, Jacob Ashworth selling tickets.
Yes.
But somebody might go, well, I like in-ring work. So okay. But if you found out he was selling 10, 15, 20% of your tickets, 15, even more, you'd keep booking him. And you wouldn't move on. Let's move on. No, he's selling tickets. Let's figure this out. Is that something more promotions should maybe look at? Stop being like who you like and find out. Like, I don't know if people know this. When you run your own business, you kind of have to run it for the market, not for what you like. Because you can run it. If you're running it for what you like, if I sold ice cream and I sold the flavors that I liked, you would walk into Nick's store and there would be like 3 flavors at best. Like, I am not hey, I like this. No, I like chocolate, like cookie dough or something, or and Reese's cup, whatever. That's it, folks. Yeah. I don't need anything else. But guess what? There's a guy who likes this flavor that I think ugh, So work for your market and not for yourself. And I think the only way you figure that out is with a little bit of research. Anyway.
Yeah. Yes. And I know that brown paper tickets screwed a bunch of people over. They still owe Southern Honor money. But brown paper tickets had a thing where even as a fan, I could go in and I could create a code as a fan and be an affiliate, and I could share that link, and I could make money through brown paper tickets for selling those tickets. So there's got to be a ticket thing out there where you wouldn't even have to do a promo code where the wrestler could create. Now, the wrestler's got to take the responsibility to create the link to promote the show. But I think as a promoter, you have to think about, okay, I'm paying this guy, let's just say $75. If my tickets are $15, this guy's got to sell 5 tickets to make it. No, actually, he's got to sell 6 tickets for me to make money on bringing him in.
Yeah.
6 tickets doesn't seem a lot.
So pull the curtain a little bit back. When we did Hell Freezes Over, we used a ticket thing called Big Cartel.
Yeah.
It's super easy. There was an app for it and everything. Like, I could control a lot of it from an app on my phone. and you could do promo codes, you could do all of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, the money's come straight to you. You know what I mean? It's like it's a PayPal in, and you could do, hey, refund all the tickets, and it goes back. There's all kinds of things. So I'm just telling you, I know it's possible because I've been there and done that. We didn't do the promo thing per wrestler, but you can do it. You could put in promo codes. You can do whatever you want to. So, and then you're controlling your own destiny. You're not at the mercies of one of the big ticket events. So,
another thing I would think about is when you think about who was a draw. Title Belt Pro had the opportunity. You could sponsor a match, you could sponsor a wrestler, or you could just have a general sponsorship. I think there was only one wrestler that was sponsored. That's a thing too, is what kind of wrestler will a sponsor pay for? A sponsor pay to see? And I'm not talking like bringing in a big name from outside, but who on your roster would a sponsor say, oh yeah, I'll give you $50 for this match or this wrestler or whatever? And again, that may not be my taste. That may not be my flavor, because the wrestler was sponsored was by far not the best wrestler on the card, but they were very sponsorable. So anyway, just things to think about. At the end of the day, we got to make money, and you got to, and a match that draws money in Monroe, Georgia, may not draw money in Tifton, Georgia, or Canton, Georgia. It's knowing your audience.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But again, at the end of the day, it's about making money. There was a very special show where two of our loves, comic books and wrestling, collided. We had the Rumble in the Shop that actually outgrew the original venue, ended up being outside in the tent. Nerd University featuring a very special appearance from a growing in popularity Georgia wrestling personality.
Yeah, man. Look, so last week, I don't know, it wasn't on the audio feed. So if you're an audio listener, go check it out. It's on Patreon and on YouTube. It's free. It's not behind a paywall or anything. I had Matt Westlake in. He owns Nerd U Comics and Collectibles. He was running his show. It was his anniversary. So he's a big wrestling fan. He's at Disruptor Wrestling. Anyway, whole story's on that interview. Go check it out. You should check it out. It was a blast doing it. Little did I know he was going to be that guy that showed up at the event, going to be the heel manager. Like I figured he was good, but anyway. But how about it? Like you said, Justin Zane needed a little help, and he reached out and got a little assistance from Money Mason Andrews. Yes, folks, Money Mason Andrews got into the ring. And listen, before you send I know there are people that are like, oh, he's just I get it. Before you judge, go watch it, because we did the same.
Yes.
Very entertaining, made us laugh, but and look, we're big fans of the kid, and kudos, to all parties involved. Obviously, it was super safe. But Money Mason Andrews picks up a big win as he pinned Matt Westlake as well. So that was kind of cool to see. And kudos for Justin, for kind of reaching out and grabbing, the little man and bringing him in. But I also kudos for them. Look, great showing up there. This show was very, special in the sense of, like, I knew what it meant. And if you did not watch, go listen to the interview. You'll find out why the show it meant more. It's not the same. Like, we're not it wasn't about crowd size and, none of that stuff mattered. The show's super special. It was done for the anniversary of the comic shop. Lots of stuff were going on at the comic shop. By the way, give Nerd U a follow. If you're a comic collector, they do Funkos, they do video games, everything collectible under the sun. Check them out and support. Like I just wanted to super promote the fact that I've been in that position literally, and if you listen to the interview, you'll hear more about that about why it matters to me. But small businesses are tough enough. Comic collectible shops are even tougher because you take a local market, narrow it down to a collectible market. So if any way, like, by the way, they do Whatnot, they do, like, you ship stuff, so all that kind of stuff, you can, even if you're far away and you're listening, you can help support a local comic shop that way, in any way. That's always a plus for me. So, but congratulations on them pulling off. I know how hard it is to pull off a show, period. So kudos to them, and congratulations for doing what they wanted to do.
And this was in Commerce, which Commerce. I mean, of all the places in Georgia, I mean, Commerce is a place I could go. I mean, that's where we go for shopping. But it's interesting. I know Commerce is close to Athens and a couple of other places. But I'm surprised Commerce does not have its own little wrestling bubble because of the town and just the Commerce draws a lot of people from the outside world.
People, like you said, if you're not familiar with the area, I just happen to have one of my daughters lives up in that area, but like the outlet malls there, the Tanger outlet malls are like the huge draw. Lanier Raceway's up there, or Drag, one of the two. I can't remember. I always can't ever keep it apart. One of the raceways is up there, so there's a lot of that. I think there's a drag, and I think there's an Indy racetrack. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, so it does, and but look, Turnbuckle does run there. They don't run there often, but it is the one I've seen it on their calendar. I know they've run there before wrestling, so they do get a show here or there. Their big one is they kind of make that commute down to Jefferson. A lot of them in Commerce, but keep an eye out because I know Turnbuckle is running there soon.
Yes. Also Saturday night, GCW ran. Don't have a lot of information, but they continue to kind of do their thing. And Georgia Championship Wrestling, you got to follow them on Facebook and keep up with all they're doing. Let's look ahead. And let's talk about making the drives. To say that Saturday, July the 13th is loaded would be probably the biggest understatement of this entire episode. Let's start off in Augusta. Phoenix Wrestling Experience. They're doing a very special thing at Savannah River Brewing Company, where it's kind of like a festival, and they've got matches going on really all day. I wanted to just highlight a couple of these two title matches. First of all, in a ladder match, Marcus Minos challenging Sean Legacy for the Pro Wrestling Experience title. That should be a great match. Sean Legacy in a ladder match, yes, please. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, look, Phoenix is rocking and rolling, and look, we're going to get into why this is a massive day for Augusta in general. I don't know if you want to jump that far ahead, or we'll get there eventually. But if you're a wrestling fan in Augusta, like you could literally make a day of the 13th.
Yes, absolutely. Also want to mention Aaron Berry, who cashed in and took that Savannah River Brewing Championship from Fluffman, being challenged for that title by Wade Adams. And then the match that I've circled from this day at Phoenix. I think these guys have wrestled one-on-one before. This is the type of match that if I were available to go, this is the kind of match I'd drive to see, and that's Billy Brash and Drew Adler.
Yeah, both of them are, I mean, they're staples in that Carolina corner, Augusta being in that wraparound corner, as I like to call it. But yeah, it would be kind of cool. Adler's just sneakingly moving up my pecking order too. I hadn't seen a ton of him because he's more of that area, but the more I see him, I'm becoming a bigger fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge Drew Adler fan. He's wrestled in the Carolinas and wrestling in the Carolinas more and more. Let's go ahead and jump to the other show that is in Augusta. That is IWE. They were scheduled to be at the Betplex. We've talked about that. The building got hit by lightning. So IWE's back at the American Legion. They've got the Mayhem title is going to be up for grabs in a multi-man match. Heath, I guess I can call him Heath Slater, formerly known as Heath Slater, one of my favorite wrestlers just because of the name, teaming with the aforementioned Billy Brash against Exotic Youth. Hello, take my money. If I could go, take my money for this match.
1,000%. I can't even imagine Slater and Mosley. That the interactions between, I got kids, we don't care, we don't like kids. That could be something that simple.
Hierarchy, which is in this iteration, Murder One and Kenway defending the tag team titles against All Star Special. You've got Haley J coming in from OVW, but she's going to be defending the IWN women's title against Ericademia. But the IWE Women's Championship, first time ever, I don't know that this has happened in Georgia. Lindsay Snow defending that title against Danny Jordan in a cage match. These ladies have been going back and forth for a year, and now they're going to finish this off in a cage. What are your thoughts on a women's cage match?
They're few and far between. That is true. I think I've seen one. And I'm like, it's obviously it's the first women's cage match in IWE. I think I have seen one in Georgia a time or two, but I don't know. This concerns me for Danny Jordan, and I say that because probably never done. I can't even imagine she's done a cage match before. In the sense, especially. I love her as a wrestler, and I think she's absolutely hands down one of my favorite women's wrestlers, that's out there. But Lindsay Snow is built for a cage, way different than Danny Jordan is. It would be hard pressed. I hope on one hand, but Lindsay Snow is going to be a huge obstacle to overcome in a cage.
Yeah, I'm very curious if this match, because it's in a cage, I'm assuming it'll be a main event. Won't be the first time that Lindsay Snow is main evented in an IWE show. So kudos for that. The IWE title is going to be on the line. White Mike defending against Joe Black, where now you're starting to see James Caleb Kitchens having control of that company. Joe Black, a member of the tag team champions, but getting a shot at the heavyweight title against White Mike.
I think this is, again, where we're going to start to hopefully see where because, look, up to this point, we haven't really, we've seen really good matches, but we need to see, let's be honest and be full control here, or full honesty. This is finally where we're seeing the hierarchy use their power. I don't know that we've seen a lot of that yet. And, so I think, because when it first all came out, what was the first question we asked? Well, what does that mean for White Mike? Where does he fall? Is he part of this? He's not. Well, clearly he's not. This is telling us he's not. Okay, well, he's the heel. He's the bad guy champion. Okay, well, where does that put him against the bad guy group that now runs the company? Do they care? They don't care about anybody but themselves. So that's the story part where we're like, okay, let's figure out where does the champion fall into this equation. And I'm curious to see where this puts White Mike at the end of the night.
And does White Mike, who's been a fighting champion since he won that title in January, I believe, does White Mike understand he's not just wrestling Joe Black? He's wrestling the owner of, literally, Kitchens controls the company. So White Mike could pin Joe Black. Kitchens could come out. We're going to restart this match. White Mike doesn't know what he's going to be facing. And the deck is definitely stacked against him on this night.
Yeah.
Maybe the biggest part of next weekend that entails Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is the Scenic City Invitational taking place. This is in Tennessee. It's in Chattanooga, Tennessee at the TWE Arena. You've got Friday night is part of the SCI. You've got Saturday, you've got the Futures Tournament, and then SCI. I'm pretty sure it's all 3 days. Let's just throw out a couple of matches they've already announced as part of the main tournament. Landon Hale versus Paul London, and Adam Priest versus Jaden Newman. Those were two of the matches that caught my eye. I'm not as familiar with some of the other wrestlers, but the three names that I would throw out as potential winners would be Landon Hale, Adam Priest, Darian Bingston. Jaden Newman has won this thing before, I believe. One called Manders, has won this thing. But I don't know if people know this. I've seen people post it. Oh man, I can't wait for to see this match. It's on IWTV, folks. It is live streaming on IWTV. Tape trading is not a thing anymore. Okay,
Right.
like you don't have to bootleg this. You know, you can order this and watch this, and this is certainly one that's going to be on my list of to check out.
Yeah, no, that's 1,000%. Like we talk about the importance of YouTube and IWTV last week a little bit, just especially like because we talked about it. Like, hey, it's not something for obvious reasons. You'll find out next week why I'm not there, but it'll be like, hey, it doesn't stop me from being able to watch it. I can sit there and watch it on my phone, for crying out loud.
Right. But let me say this about SCI. If I were able to go, that's something I would still go to even if I could stream it. Now, when we talked about streaming last week, sometimes there's stuff I know I can stream it, but I want to be there. I want to be there for that.
SCI is hands down an event you need to experience. That is true. That is true.
Yeah, yes. Always put on some great things, first class acts. Premier All Star next Saturday is going to be in Villa Rica, Georgia. They're doing a big fan fest. There's limited seating, so bring your own chair. There's also bleacher seating. They're having a meet and greet, and again, you want to talk about one of these matches, the type of match that I see on a poster. I'm like, how do I get to this show? And that is Chip Day taking on Bobby Fish. Holy cow.
This match will appease the taste because we talked about it, right? We talked about one thing that I like. Well, we just literally talked about like, hey, the importance of the emotional investment, the attachment. But on the national show, I always get into a conversation about AEW where that seems like what they care about more than that's like literally is that like the only thing they care about.
Mm-hmm.
You have to walk, especially in indie wrestling, to be able to do both. So they're going to look, if you want to talk about a match that will appease the in-ring fan, especially on an indie show, I don't think you're going to do much better than Bobby Fish and Chip Day. There's not often that I look at a match and go, this match won't disappoint. They're going to go in there and they're going to tear the house down. It's going to be absolutely spectacular. But at the same time, you're going to have something super entertaining. I'm looking down the card, and I'm sorry I'm going around you here, but Alexander Levin, Matt Sells, they're going to do out there, and they're going to do the entertainment part. But I guarantee you, Frankie Valentine and Austin Thorne is the match for the championship that people are emotionally invested in. You see where I'm going with this, right? We're bouncing all over, but it's like, this is kind of the why. Oh, and by the way, Pat Roach and Jacob Ashworth are going to go out there and give you an old school Southern wrestling match.
Right.
It's going to be as traditional and old school as it comes. By the way, curiosity, Jacob Ashworth is your Georgia Heritage title. Is this thing going to be on the line? Is Pat Roach going to get a chance? Because I bet Pat Roach is just chomping at the bit here to get a shot at that title because I know what that would mean to him.
Yes.
With the the lineage, maybe is the word I'm looking for, of that championship, like how much that would mean to him. And look, he's on pretty much of a roll lately in a lot of places. So could Pat Roach be your next Georgia Heritage champion? Jacob Ashworth, does he answer that challenge? That's a question.
You've also got a bull rope match. You got Zach Buchanan. This is an absolute loaded card that has something for everyone. These are the type of, I want to see more of this in Georgia. That's got a little bit of everything, appeals to all the different tastes.
And by the way, the premiers, they're good about throwing in a surprise, which I'm not going to get into, but they got a surprise or two up their sleeve for this show. So it's even stuff you're going to be surprised when you show
up. Georgia Premier Wrestling, they're in Jasper, Georgia. Their main event is for the title triple threat match. Warden, Trevor Blackwell, and Josh Cantrell. That is going to be a hard-hitting affair between those three men.
So I'm not really sure, and a lot of people are, I saw, Josh Cantrell did a promo on the 4th of July from a pool, which was entertaining. If you haven't seen it, go check out Showtime Josh Cantrell. And from up there at GPW, he's supposed to be him and Warden one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And Trevor Blackwell, I'm not really sure why this kid think he deserves to be slid in there, but somehow Hooker by crook has snuck his way in there, so to make this thing a triple threat. But I hate to tell the kids something. Warden's a big bad dude who's all over the place now, and I don't know that anybody's loved more at GPW than Showtime Josh Cantrell, and I think he's going to be hands down the odds-on favorite. I'm sure Warden's going to have something to do with it, and I'm wondering if Trevor Blackwell thinks he's going to be any part of the equation, because I don't think either one of these other guys are happy he's in this match.
Yeah, that's going to be. GPW really kind of reestablishing themselves. And again, that's a match that's got a little bit of everything. It's got the intrigue. It's got Warden is a force to be reckoned with wherever he's at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna be one I'm interested to hear about. And then finally on Saturday night, Wrestlemerica. Some great matches happening. The one, I think this is his first title defense since winning the title, Fry Daddy against the aforementioned Drew Adler. Drew Adler and his brother Ryan North have been a force to be reckoned with in Wrestlemerica, and now trying to head for that heavyweight championship.
Look, the next match that we got on our notes here, it's going to be part of the problem. Drew Adler's going to be fighting an uphill battle is because CT Keys is going to be in the building. And look, I know Fry Daddy likes to say, I don't need CT Keys. Well, if you didn't need him, you kind of has used him. So let's just kind of go with that. But so that's going to be an uphill battle for Drew Adler for sure.
CT Keys and Jacob Johnson, and then you got Sauer Nard and Zach Edwards taking on Damage Incorporated. So again, a full night there of Wrestlemerica. Some of the usual talents that you're accustomed to seeing there, and then probably some fresh faces. So again, it's a full. The next couple of weekends is going to be absolutely full. Different promotions, different venues. We wanted to take a moment though, because I don't know if you guys know this. If you're watching this, and I know we have viewers all around the world, but this is the South. And this is Georgia, and it is hot. And in the words of the late, great Louis Grizzard, sometimes it's not the heat, it's the humidity. Yeah. It's a different kind of heat. And so fans, you need to be there's got to be an understanding and a partnership between fans and promotions. Fans have to understand the show I went to Friday night. I did not know. It was on the poster. I didn't see it, but I didn't realize till on my way up there, this is kind of like an outdoor kind of show. It's going to be hot. So as a fan, you have to prepare yourself. Okay, it's going to be hot. But as a promotion, you've also got to say up front, hey, we don't have AC. We're outside. But what are some other things you think fans and promotions can do to make a hot experience more enjoyable?
I don't know that you can. That's the problem, especially here where we are in the Southeast, right? It's just, and here's the fine line. By the way, kudos. This came up because George Lambert, one of the powers that be's down there in Wrestlemerica, brought up, he put it on his social media account, and I saw it. I'm like, hey, if you have AC in your building, you might want to advertise it in the South, this time of year. And I'm like 1,000%, because listen, here's a tricky thing. We do a podcast and we try to cover a lot of the wrestling. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, and I'm not going to say the name of the venue because it was, I'm going to leave it alone. There was a building that I remember looking at Myron a few years ago and saying, unfortunately, from June to September, you can't pay me. We don't get paid to do this.
That's right.
You couldn't pay me to go to one of their shows from June to September because it's absolutely miserable in that building. And somebody was like, wasn't it your responsibility? No, it isn't. By the way, the aforementioned YouTube and IWTV and all of those things have made it where it's not necessary.
Yeah.
So the question was, when buildings choose to run, or sorry, back up. When promotions choose to run venues that don't have air conditioner, that don't have any way, like doors that go up for a breeze, fans, nothing, and you know it's going to be hot, are you stunned when your attendance drops? If it doesn't, kudos for you. That tells you how hot your promotion is right now. But I will tell you bluntly, like I have had moments where I look at the temperature and just go, it's not happening today. It's just the heat. And look, and by the way, it's not their fault. I was looking at a show this past weekend. The heat index in that city was 104. And I'm like, I'm going to go sit in a building that has no AC, it's outside. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to chill at home. It's not a disrespect to the promotion. It's just not. I can sit at home. I can watch Money in the Bank in my air conditioning home. And, kudos. I don't really know what we were trying to say here when we talked about it, but it's a real thing.
Yes.
That's all I can say. It's a real thing. And I think my point was, I think George Lambert was correct. If you have an AC building, I think it's a great opportunity to promote your show and put yourself over, because if I had to choose this weekend or the next weekend, which will, when you see the calendar for next weekend, it's insane. Don't think that's not something that comes into my mind.
I think promotions also have a responsibility. If they're running an outdoor show, I don't think fans understand. I have talked to wrestlers who worked outdoor shows in the summer who got second-degree burns just from taking bumps on the canvas. That's how hot the canvas gets. I don't think fans understand that. Like if you're laying, if you got a guy in a side headlock and you're laying on that, I mean, it is burning. It's physically burning your skin.
By the way, I want to ask you one other thing. Do they also have an obligation to, and I know this sounds contradictory, maybe this is why your tickets are either free or not expensive. We're not giving you a three-hour show. Like,
right.
Dude, it's got to be like a 2-hour show and get us out of here.
Yes. I would say one thing Title Belt Pro did, if you bought a VIP ticket, you got a fan and that thing was great. Did it take away all the heat misery? No. I think another thing is how, you can get a case of 40 bottled waters for less than $10. You buy 5 cases of bottled water, and every fan that walks in, you hand them an ice cold bottled water. You say, hey, we know it's hot. This is costing us 50 cents a bottle. We want you to know we're grateful. We're grateful you're here. Or you sell your bottle. I mean, you give them a bottle of water and you sell it for $1. I also think, and I love the ring announcer from Title Belt Pro. He is one of my favorites. Just a super good guy. But I would tell people, we know it's hot. Don't mention it. Don't talk about it. Like, don't keep bringing it up and reminding people how hot it is. Let's just do our thing and tell people, hey, this is where you can go to get cool. This is where you go to get water. But, like, don't oversell the fact that it is super, super, super hot.
Yeah. By the way, Sam's Club, 40 bottles of water for $4.98.
Yeah. Like, people are paying a ticket, or just give them a bottle of water. Just give it to them. So anyway, not only are the venues hot, but the action is hot, and the podcast is hot, fans. And the only place on the planet to keep up with the most comprehensive coverage of Georgia independent wrestling, and now, beyond, we talk about the Carolinas, we talk about some stuff in Tennessee, is right here, the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. We not only cover the indie stuff, but Byron and Nick cover all the national stuff. So if you want to hear, I'm sure they're going to be talking about Money in the Bank from this past weekend. But the only way to keep up with all that, again, is patreon.com. You can become a member there. Patreon.com/tappedOutPod. Also on YouTube, you can become a member there. But thank you for your continued support of the show. Listen, we are trying to be as comprehensive as we can be. We can't be in everywhere at once. We're so appreciative to the wrestlers and workers and promoters who are sending us information. But again, I would say we were talking about this morning. We're trying to talk about your show. We're going on your Facebook page to get information about your show. And sometimes it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Okay.
So put the information out there. We will cover it. We will talk about it. But fans, we appreciate your support. Can't wait to tell you a little bit more next week. I'm excited for next week's episode because we have some announcements to make, and it'll be very interesting. So any final thoughts on this week's Tapped In, Nick?
No, man. Like I said, big week. Next week looks even bigger. Lots of surprises. Next week's episode will be a little bit different, and you'll find out next week when you tune in. But like he said, man, make sure you're subscribing. Like I said, this week we are going to talk a little Money in the Bank, but of course the big news, John Cena. Check out the national show later this week and see what we have to say about that, because I know that's going to be a huge topic of conversation.
Because after 2025, you literally won't be able to see him. So
that
I had
is
to
correct.
go there. Had to go there. So, hey, fans, again, thanks for your support of the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. For Nick McDaniel, this is Heath Mulligan, and we will see you at the matches.